In a normal hoof, you're going to always have some little superficial cracks. Changes in the hydration level of the foot, your moisture content will result in superficial checking and cracking on the hoof. That's normal. Once you get accustomed to what's normal for your horse, you learn to ignore those to a certain extent. But then you need to look for those that are more serious and that are at the ground. I think it's especially important to, if you see any crack that is following the horn tubule, and you'll see these little lines that go down the hoof. If you've got a hoof that has pigment, it's easier to see those. This pigmented hoof, it's much easier to see and you can see that's kind of a blind crack right here. Basically, it's a crack waiting to happen. So it's a structural flaw or weakness. You'll see this very often on healthy feet. But if they don't get maintenance regularly, if they're allowed to distort, then that's your opportunistic region for that crack to come in. One of the things that we work with constantly is changes in moisture content within the hoof wall. And we can't control that a whole lot. It's climate-based, it's environment-based, and we try to minimize that as much as possible, try to regulate moisture in the hoof. Nevertheless, it's going to have superficial checks and cracks. And the more it shifts from wet to dry, the more you're going to see superficial cracking. It's kind of like your hair would do if you went swimming every day in the summer. You get little split ends that you wouldn't have otherwise. So you get that superficial cracking, and but it's superficial, it's on the surface. And you don't really worry about those except for reminding you that you need to regulate moisture more and that you need to stay on top of your maintenance. If, however, it's a suppurating crack or a crack that goes through the hoof wall, then you have to be concerned. And so you're looking for a crack or you're hoping not to find a crack that goes through the entire hoof wall. And because then you have a structural issue. If you have something like this blind crack, it's not an issue at this point, it's just a potential problem. It tells you need to stay on top of your maintenance, that you need to work on balance, that you need to work on hydration, but you don't need to work on that crack. You need to work on all of the other issues to make sure that it doesn't become a problem.
There aren't many guarantees in the barn, but we've got one you can count on. Order any of our Smart supplements in SmartPaks and we'll guarantee you'll see results or we'll give you your money back. Supplements that are guaranteed to work. We took care of that too.
The real problems, the real issues with cracks are the penetrating cracks that go throughout the hoof wall, and they weaken the integrity of the hoof wall and its ability to support. There are a number of things that are going to contribute to a hoof cracking. Conformation is an issue, balance is an issue, moisture is an issue. So you've got conformation, balance, moisture. All of those mean that you've got to work on maintenance. And balancing that hoof is the most important thing you can do. That means regular hoof care. In some cases, if you're dealing with a crack and trying to recover a crack, you'll see a lot of situations where you'll have a veterinarian and a farrier working together. They may do something as radical as lacing, using stainless steel wire and lacing the crack. But one of the things that you do need to be careful about is to make sure that you don't trap material behind that crack. If you use an acrylic patch or any sort of patching material to try to mend that crack, you have to make sure that you are not trapping any moisture and bacteria behind there that will create an infection. And this horse actually had, you can see the remainders of a patch here, where he got patched, and these the patches actually drove the infection into the hoof. And So you have to be very careful that you're not driving infection in and holding infection or creating an opportunity for infection. The crack needs to be, in general, balanced, unloaded, and maintained. Paying attention to cracks, recognizing the difference between superficial cracks and cracks that affect the integrity of the hoof wall. It's important stuff. Stay with us as we look at more hoof health concerns here at SmartPak.